The father stood stiff, holding a stack of complaint notices Karen had left in the mailbox, their edges curling from a morning drizzle. The mother's fingers trembled over the phone, dialing the HOA office in vain, hoping her pleas would make some difference. The children clutched each other, whispering, "Why does she hate our yard? Why won't she leave?" Their voices drifted out the open window, but Karen didn't care. She never did. "Mr. Henderson, this is unacceptable," Karen barked, her voice sharp enough to make the terrier flinch. "The hedges are uneven. The flowers are not symmetrical. And what is this? An unsanctioned garden gnome. This neighborhood has standards." Her gaze snapped to the terrier, though she didn't yet know him by name. Still, instinctively, he shrank lower, fur bristling, but his dark eyes burned with curiosity and defiance. He had seen Karen destroy peace before, with a flick of her pen or a threatening signature. Today would be no different, unless he did something clever. The terrier had been small, often overlooked, underestimated. Children tripped over him. Adults ignored his whines. But he remembered the family's warmth, their laughter, the soft hand stroking his back, the tiny scraps of food they secretly left for him. Today, they were humiliated in front of Karen, powerless against her rigid authority. The terrier's chest tightened, heart pounding. His instincts told him this injustice was not permanent. Someone small, underestimated, could make a difference. Perhaps that someone was him. Karen's rant continued, her voice rising, mixing with the dripping rain and the squeak of a swing in a neighbor's yard. "You have 3 days to correct this, or fines escalate." She flipped her clipboard shut, jabbing it into the air for emphasis, her glare boring into the family. The father swallowed hard, nodding, but the terrier could see the frustration, the helplessness behind his eyes. The children's eyes glistened, one of them tugging a blanket closer. The mother's lips pressed together in silent outrage. Every muscle in the little terrier's body hummed with tension, yet his mind raced. He knew Karen's threats were empty in practice, but what if there was a way to turn her own tactics against her? Karen turned on her heel, heels snapping against the pavement, voice fading into the distance as she stomped to the next house on her route of intimidation. The terrier exhaled quietly, body still low, tail tucked tightly around his hind legs. The rain plastered his fur to his spine, each drop a reminder of the family's suffering and his own vulnerability. He padded closer to the front gate, ears twitching as he observed the subtle traps Karen left behind, stakes placed just so, notices pinned in obvious view, cameras he suspected monitored the street. She thrived on control, manipulation, the sense of being untouchable. And yet, even in this humiliation, even under the oppressive gaze of HOA Karen, the terrier felt something stir inside him, a spark of courage, tiny but resolute. He would watch, learn, and wait. For the first time, he understood the truth of his own potential. The smallest, cleverest among them could challenge the tyrant and protect the family who had always believed in him. Night descended, rain tapering into a drizzle, mist curling over the sidewalks. The family retreated inside, closing doors and blinds against Karen's scrutiny, leaving the terrier alone in the front yard. He padded to the edge of the hedges, sniffing the soil, pressing his nose against the damp wood of the porch. It was a small world, but it was theirs, and if Karen thought she could erase it, she had another thing coming. The terrier's eyes glinted in the fading light, reflecting determination, intelligence, and a silent promise. Tonight, the first seeds of rebellion were planted. He would no longer be unseen. He would no longer allow Karen to humiliate the ones who had shown him love. A low wind whispered through the trees, a prelude to the challenges ahead, but the terrier's stance hardened. He was ready to learn, to act, and to outsmart the controlling hand that had ruled their street for far too long. The shadows of the neighborhood seemed alive with possibility. And in those shadows, a clever little terrier had begun to plan. Rain had softened into a persistent drizzle, but the chill of early evening seeped into every corner of the neighborhood. The terrier, small yet determined, padded along the narrow alley behind the Hendersons' home. His paws splashed through puddles, ears pressed low, eyes scanning the dimly lit street. Karen's presence lingered in the air, her scent sharp and commanding, her clipboard always looming like a sword of judgment. Every shadow could hide her scrutiny. Every footstep on wet pavement could signal her approach. Inside the house, the family's voices carried faintly into the alley. The children whispered about what they could do to make the yard safe, as if their efforts could somehow please Karen. The mother sighed, holding the phone in a trembling hand, trying to document every fine, every threat. The father walked back and forth near the window, fists clenched, guilt etched across his face. They loved the terrier dearly, and each day, without him close to the warmth of the house, tore at them. They were powerless against Karen, yet their hearts beat in hope for their clever little guardian. The terrier's mind whirred as he observed Karen from a distance. Today, she had left a new series of notices taped to the fence, listing imaginary violations, escalating fines, and implied threats. She even stationed a security camera in front of the house, aimed at the yard. The terrier's tail bristled, for damp, every instinct screaming that the family needed more than obedience. They needed protection. He had to act, but Karen's power was vast, and the traps were many. Night fell heavier, shadows stretching across the street. The terrier slunk along the alley, nose twitching at every sound. The drip of rain from gutters, the scurry of nocturnal animals, the distant laughter of neighborhood kids long gone to bed. Karen's car rolled slowly past the house, headlights cutting through the darkness, a reminder that her watch was constant. Each time the terrier moved, he measured the risk. One wrong step, and Karen could escalate her campaign, or worse, involve animal control. Back inside, the family tried to fortify their spirits. The mother knelt by the window, murmuring words of encouragement to the terrier, even though he was out of sight. "Stay safe, little one," she whispered. "We know you're brave." The children pressed their hands to the glass, eyes wide, wishing they could make him understand how much he meant to them. Every glance at the porch, every creak of the boards, reminded them that their tiny hero was keeping watch, that his courage was their only defense. Karen escalated her campaign the next morning. She called the HOA board, claiming the family's yard was a hazard, threatening fines that could bankrupt them if left unpaid. She posted letters, photographed minor irregularities, and delivered them with the precision of a predator marking territory. But the terrier watched, calculated, and learned. He began mapping Karen's routines, noting the times she patrolled, the subtle gaps in her oversight, the places where her attention wavered. His small body shivered in the wind, but his amber eyes glimmered with understanding. Intelligence and cleverness could counter brute authority. The terrier faced setbacks, too. One night, attempting to sniff out evidence of Karen's surveillance, he got caught in a sudden rainstorm. Cold water ran down his spine, soaking his fur, and he slipped in the mud, landing with a soft thud. His body ached, and for the first time, doubt crept into his mind. Could a small terrier really protect a family from someone as formidable as Karen? Hunger clawed at him, exhaustion weighed him down, and for a fleeting moment, the alley seemed endless, oppressive, and hopeless. Yet, each time he returned to the yard, the sight of the family waiting, eyes filled with hope, renewed his spirit. He pressed his nose against the wet fence, listening to the faint laughter of the children, feeling the warmth of love that no storm could wash away. The father stepped out briefly, offering him a small piece of bread, whispering, "We're counting on you." The mother's gaze softened, tears glistening as she murmured, "You're our hero, little one." Each word, each gesture, rekindled his courage. Karen's control began to show cracks. Some neighbors whispered discontent, noticing the little terrier's unwavering patrols. The children's laughter, once hushed in fear, now carried defiance. Karen's threats were losing power. And yet, she doubled down, planting traps and cameras, trying to intimidate the terrier into submission. The chapter closed with the terrier crouched behind a trash bin, soaked, shivering, yet eyes alight with resolve. He understood the obstacles, Karen's authority, the cameras, the growing isolation. But he also understood his own strength. Cleverness, loyalty, and a bond with a family that relied on him completely. The terrier's small body was tense, muscles coiled, ready to learn, to observe, and to strike when the time was right. Tonight, he would begin planning. Not a rash charge, not reckless defiance, but strategic observation. He would map Karen's weaknesses, understand her patterns, and prepare for the moment when cleverness, courage, and loyalty could outmatch cruelty, entitlement, and control. The streets were darker, the challenges heavier, yet his resolve burned brighter. The revenge had not yet begun, but the first moves were being carefully made. Dawn had barely brushed the rooftops when the terrier stirred from a damp alley corner. The rain from the previous night had left streets glistening, and mist clung to the grass like a veil. His small body, wiry yet resilient, moved silently along the perimeter of the Hendersons' yard. Each paw step was measured. Each sniff of the air was tactical. He had learned Karen's patterns, the cadence of her footsteps, the rhythm of her patrols, the predictable points where her gaze faltered. For weeks, she had underestimated him. For weeks, she had believed a small dog could be ignored. Now, that error would become her undoing. Inside, the family stirred with anxious anticipation. The children tiptoed past the living room window, whispering to each other, peeking toward the yard. Their mother crouched beside them, holding a notebook filled with observations of Karen's daily routines, her phone recording every violation, every aggressive action. "If he can see it, we can prove it," she whispered. The father leaned against the doorway, hands trembling, yet eyes sharp with determination. "Our little guy is ready," he murmured. "And so are we." Every gesture, every hushed word, was a silent pact between the family and their loyal guardian. The terrier began with small victories. He slipped under the fence at night, navigating the yard with nimble precision, avoiding the newly installed cameras. Each step was a dance of observation, pawing at corners where Karen had hidden her evidence against the family. He discovered receipts, discarded forms, and photocopied letters, each one a piece of the puzzle Karen thought she had securely tucked away. He carried small items, dragging them beneath shrubs or hiding them in the alley, meticulously mapping her misdeeds. Karen, oblivious to the tiny intruder, continued her morning inspection. Her red blazer stiff from the chill, clipboard clutched tightly, heels clicking against the sidewalk, she strutted as though the neighborhood were her dominion. She glared at the Hendersons' home with practiced authority, oblivious that the terrier's amber eyes tracked her every movement, calculating, waiting, plotting. He saw her pause, adjust a garden ornament, check her watch, moments where human arrogance and predictability could be exploited. By late afternoon, the terrier had completed his reconnaissance. He had learned where Karen hid incriminating documents, where her traps were set, and the times she left gaps in her patrols. Each obstacle she presented, fences, cameras, threats, was now a challenge he had cataloged, a series of weak points he could exploit. His tail bristled with quiet excitement. The reversal was no longer a distant idea. It was imminent. That evening, the family gathered in the dim light of the living room, whispering plans. The mother outlined where Karen's letters and notices were likely stored, highlighting dates and forged signatures. The children mapped routes the terrier could take, noting gaps in sight lines, potential hiding spots, and times when he could act without detection. The father's hand rested gently on the back of the eldest child. "He's ready," he said softly. "And we are too. It's time to turn the tables." Each human heart mirrored the determination glowing in the terrier's chest, a shared mission bound by trust, loyalty, and the desire for justice. Night fell heavier than usual. The terrier moved with ghost-like precision across the yard. He avoided the camera's glow, crept under the fence, and navigated to Karen's property. Every step was fraught with tension, muscles coiled, for slick from dew. Inside Karen's home, she remained unaware, absorbed in plotting her next punitive action. The terrier sniffed out a folder left carelessly on a side table, pawing it toward the door, dragging it silently into the shadowed alley. With each successful maneuver, his confidence grew, a spark transforming into a flame. The turning point arrived when he intercepted Karen's threat letters meant for the HOA board. Hidden beneath bushes, he carefully tugged them out of her mailbox, dropping them into an empty cardboard box he had positioned beforehand. Each stolen document represented a symbolic victory, a small dog disrupting a human's carefully constructed world of control and intimidation. As he returned to the Hendersons' yard, paws muddy, tail high, he felt the first taste of triumph, though the ultimate confrontation still loomed. Karen's frustration mounted the next morning. She discovered the missing documents, her neat piles disrupted. Her eyes blazed, lips curling in disbelief and fury. The HOA board received emails with copies of her forged papers, leaving Karen flustered, scrambling to explain herself. Meanwhile, the family observed from behind curtained windows, hearts swelling as their little guardian had outmaneuvered the seemingly invincible foe. Their whispers of encouragement reached the terrier, who lifted his head, ears pricked, sensing their pride, their relief, their love. Neighbors, too, began noticing subtle shifts. They watched as the terrier, small but fearless, patrolled the yard with newfound authority. Some left scraps of food or silently nodded, acknowledging the heroism of the creature who refused to be intimidated. Karen's presence became less commanding. Her arrogance, once unassailable, now wavered. The tiny terrier, underestimated by all, had begun to reshape the narrative of power. As night fell again, the terrier crouched on the porch, amber eyes glinting in the moonlight. The storm from the previous week had returned, rain streaking down roofs, wind rattling shutters. He was not the same small dog who had fled down alleys days ago. He was now a strategist, a protector, a force against injustice. Every instinct screamed at him. The final phase was approaching. The documents were secured, Karen's schemes exposed, and the family's trust had cemented his resolve. The chapter closed on a tense, cinematic note. The terrier's gaze fixed on the distant glow of Karen's porch light. Each breath was measured, each heartbeat a drum of determination. The reversal had begun, but the ultimate confrontation, where courage, cleverness, and loyalty would collide with entitlement, arrogance, and cruelty, awaited. In the shadows, a small hero prepared to change everything. The alley had been his school, the yard, his proving ground, and Karen, oblivious, was about to meet the consequences of underestimating a dog. Night had fallen over the neighborhood like a velvet curtain, thick with the scent of rain-soaked earth and the promise of confrontation. The terrier crouched low in the shadows, every muscle coiled like a spring, for slick from recent drizzle. His amber eyes glimmered with sharp focus, reflecting not fear, but determination and cunning. He had waited for this moment, strategized every step, and now the pieces were aligned. Karen's arrogance, her misplaced trust, and the family's unwavering support. Tonight, justice would be served. Inside the Hendersons' home, the family held their breath. The children peered from behind curtains, their faces illuminated by soft lamplight, while their mother clutched a stack of evidence, the forged letters, photos, and documents the terrier had recovered. "He's ready," whispered the father, voice tight with pride. The tiny terrier, underestimated for so long, had become their vigilant protector, and now the final act was upon them. The dog moved with silent precision, slipping under the fence into Karen's manicured yard. Each paw step was calculated, muscles tense yet fluid, ears flicking at every creak of boards or whisper of wind. Karen, absorbed in reviewing papers and muttering to herself, remained unaware of the approaching intruder. The terrier navigated obstacles with ingenuity. A rolled-up hose became a stepping point, a loose garden stone a shield of shadow. Every move exploited human blind spots. Every sniff detected the weak points in Karen's control. As he reached the porch, he tugged the folder of evidence from beneath a side table, dragging it carefully into the dark. The rain, picking up again, masked his movements and added an element of drama, streaks of lightning illuminating the tense scene in cinematic flashes. Karen suddenly noticed a movement out of the corner of her eye, a blur of black fur, low and determined. Her eyes widened in disbelief as the terrier, small yet unstoppable, emerged from the shadows carrying her own hidden misdeeds.
Hey,
Karen screamed, rushing forward, arms flailing, heels clattering against the wet wood. But it was too late. The dog had already disappeared into the alley, leaving her grasping at emptiness, a snapshot of chaos and humiliation. From the Hendersons' yard, the family erupted into quiet cheers, hearts racing, eyes shining with relief and pride. The terrier returned, agile and triumphant, leaving Karen exposed, documents scattered, and her aura of control shattered. The neighborhood had begun to notice. Lights flicked on in nearby homes, neighbors emerging with umbrellas, watching the spectacle of small yet fearless justice. Whispers filled the streets. A dog had dared to confront the overbearing Karen, and by some cleverness or fate, he had succeeded. The balance of power had shifted. Karen's once commanding presence now appeared ridiculous, her anger evident but impotent against the clever dog who had undone her plans. Inside the Hendersons' living room, the mother pressed the documents to her chest, tears welling. "He did it," she whispered, voice breaking. The father knelt beside the terrier, stroking his wet fur. "You've saved us. You've saved the house." The children ran out, arms open, laughing through the tension, hugging the small hero who had carried the family's faith and their hopes across the shadowed yards and stormy nights. Every wag of his tail, every bright, gleaming eye, spoke of victory and pride. Karen, realizing her schemes had been dismantled and her authority publicly questioned, stormed across the street, drenched and humiliated. The documents she had hidden, meant to intimidate, now lay exposed. The HOA board had already been emailed copies, neighbors whispered about the fraud, and her reputation crumbled under the weight of evidence she had failed to secure. Every scream and outburst only emphasized her defeat. The terrier stood tall on the Hendersons' porch, chest heaving, fur dripping, amber eyes scanning the street. This was his domain now, not by ownership, but by loyalty, courage, and brilliance. Each neighbor who approached, smiling or applauding, affirmed his place as protector, as hero. The children climbed the steps, embracing him, their laughter ringing through the night, blending with the rhythm of rain on rooftops, a symphony of triumph. Even the police, previously skeptical, nodded in respect as they documented the incident, reviewing evidence that implicated Karen in repeated intimidation and rule violations. The tiny dog, underestimated and overlooked, had orchestrated a reversal so complete that it reshaped the neighborhood's perception. Power lay not in entitlement, but in courage and intelligence, in the determination to protect what is right. Karen, defeated and exposed, retreated to her home, a shadow of her former commanding self. Her red blazer was damp, her clipboard abandoned, her authority dissolved in the stormy aftermath. From the safety of the alley, the terrier observed, ears twitching, alert yet relaxed, a silent sentinel who had exacted justice without losing his essence, without surrendering to fear or cruelty. The family stepped onto the porch, surrounding their loyal protector. "You never gave up," the father said softly, voice trembling. The mother stroked his fur gently, whispering words of gratitude and admiration. The children laughed, hugging him tight, celebrating the triumph of loyalty, cleverness, and courage. In that moment, the tiny terrier was no longer just a pet. He was a legend, a guardian whose intelligence and bravery had overturned the arrogance of Karen and restored peace to their world. Lightning cracked across the sky one last time, illuminating the neighborhood in a cinematic glow. Rain fell in soft sheets, yet it did not dampen the spirit of victory. From the shadows, the terrier lifted his head, amber eyes scanning the horizon with quiet pride. Karen had underestimated him, dismissed him, mocked him, but now, justice had been served. The neighborhood, the family, and even the smallest paws had spoken. Courage triumphs over cruelty, cleverness over arrogance, loyalty over entitlement. The night ended with calm. The family, huddled close, basked in the quiet satisfaction of victory. Neighbors whispered, Neighbors nodded, and a small terrier, soaked and triumphant, stood on the porch as the true hero. Karen's reign had crumbled, her authority exposed, and her intimidation undone. And in that quiet aftermath, the neighborhood felt a renewed sense of justice, a restored sense of order, and a deep respect for the courageous little dog who had changed everything. As dawn approached, the terrier curled contentedly at the foot of the steps, eyes half closed but still alert, tail flicking softly. The family surrounded him, laughter and smiles filling the air. The lesson was clear: never underestimate the underdog.